This is my ranking of tank warfare games that I've played based purely on my personal experience. Each one is placed from masterpiece to trash depending on how realistic the tank combat feels, how tactical the battles are, and how well armor, positioning, and strategy matter. Let's get straight into the list. World of Tanks is a multiplayer tank combat game where I controlled armored vehicles in team-based battles and tried to destroy enemy tanks or capture their base. Each match placed me on large maps with hills, cover, and open ground that changed how I approached every fight. Combat relied on aiming carefully, choosing good positions and understanding armor, since shells could bounce or fail to penetrate depending on where they landed. I also had to unlock better guns, engines, and tanks through a progression system that became slower at higher tiers. Different tank classes played unique roles, from artillery support to frontline brawling. Some mechanics felt unclear, especially spotting and damage calculations, and luck could affect important shots. Even with those issues, I placed World of Tanks in the great tier. War Thunder put me behind both armored vehicles and military aircraft as I fought across large online battlefields with different objectives. During matches, I could bring multiple vehicles into combat and return with another machine if one was destroyed. Tank battles relied on careful movement, aiming, and using hills, rocks, and cover to gain an advantage over enemy players. Aircraft battles involved locating targets, managing long distances, and engaging enemies in the air before attacking ground positions. I unlocked new vehicles, upgrades, and crew improvements through a progression system that stretched across several nations. Ground combat delivered the strongest moments because capture points and vehicle variety kept battles active. Some menus and currency systems were difficult to understand, and air combat could feel slower at times. Taking everything into account, I placed War Thunder in the good tier. Gunner, Heat, PC. Let me operate Cold War-era tanks in large-scale military scenarios where realistic armor, ammunition, and battlefield awareness played a major role in survival. I moved between different vehicles, engaged enemy armor at long range, and relied on advanced optics to spot threats before they could react. The simulation modeled detailed ballistics and damage systems, making every shot depend on range, angle, and target placement. Night battles stood out because superior vision equipment could completely shift the balance of power, allowing me to detect opponents long before they saw my position. When a vehicle was destroyed, I could continue the mission by taking control of another crew, keeping battles active and unpredictable. Even though some campaign features were still under development, the tactical combat already felt well designed. With those strengths, it reaches the great tier. Tank Crew put me in charge of a single tank crew during World War II campaigns where I searched for objectives, managed battles, and tried to keep my crew alive through multiple engagements. I could play as either American or German forces and move across a campaign map filled with uncertain enemy activity. Before each battle, I rolled for resistance levels, enemy numbers, support units, terrain, spotting, and combat results, creating a highly unpredictable experience. Combat involved many steps, from identifying targets and positioning units to calculating attacks and damage through a large collection of charts and tables. Learning the rules took time because so many systems depended on reference sheets, but each battle felt different due to the amount of randomness involved. It worked best as a slow-paced solo experience built around decision-making and dice rolls. It sits in the good tier. Sherman Commander followed an American tank crew during World War II as I supported infantry, captured objectives, and pushed through towns and battlefields across Europe. Missions combined tank combat, squad command, and real-time strategy elements into a single experience. I could direct infantry from inside my Sherman or switch to a tactical map to coordinate attacks, defend positions, and react to enemy movements. Battles allowed different approaches, including flanking enemy armor, securing secondary objectives, or launching direct assaults toward key locations. The destructible environments and varied mission layouts helped each operation feel different. However, Friendly units required constant orders and rarely acted effectively on their own, which meant I spent a lot of time managing squads instead of commanding my tank. While the mix of infantry and armor was interesting, the execution left room for improvement. It settles into the mediocre tier. Steel Armor Blaze of War allowed me to oversee military operations across several Cold War battlefields before stepping into the role of a tank crew member during combat. The game was divided into several layers, allowing me to move forces, investigate enemy positions hidden by fog of war, organize formations, and then participate directly in combat. During battles, I could switch between crew roles, such as commander, gunner, and driver, while operating detailed vehicles with realistic visibility and controls. Success depended on careful positioning, battlefield awareness, and coordinating units rather than rushing into enemy territory. The campaigns covered uncommon military conflicts, which helped the setting stand out from many other tank games. While the simulation systems were deep and rewarding to learn, the interface often made simple tasks more complicated than necessary. It lands in the good tier. M1 Tank Platoon II is a tank simulation where I controlled an Abrams platoon across large battlefields while coordinating infantry, artillery, helicopters, and other armored units. Missions placed me in changing combat situations where I had to plan movements, assign orders, and react to enemy maneuvers as the battle developed. When fighting from inside the tank, I used thermal sights, rangefinders, and different ammunition types to engage targets across long distances. Terrain played a major role, allowing me to use ridgelines, valleys, and defensive positions to gain an advantage. The game also included a strategic command layer that let me manage multiple units instead of focusing on a single vehicle. Enemy forces could reposition, retreat, or launch coordinated attacks, making battlefield awareness important throughout every mission. Taking all of that into consideration, I placed it in the good tier. Armored Brigade explored a Cold War conflict scenario where I commanded armored, mechanized, and infantry forces across large tactical battlefields between 1965 and 1990. Before each mission, I selected units, adjusted force composition, chose objectives, and prepared deployment plans based on the battlefield layout. Once combat began, I issued orders to formations rather than constantly controlling every individual vehicle, which made larger engagements easier to manage. Tanks, infantry, helicopters, aircraft, and artillery all played important roles, and success depended on reconnaissance, positioning, morale, and coordination between different unit types. Enemy forces were not immediately identified, so spotting and confirming contacts became an important part of every battle. The order delay system also meant my commands were not carried out instantly, adding another layer of planning. This rises into the excellent tier. Combat Mission Cold War presented a fictional Soviet invasion of West Germany, where I directed infantry, tanks, and support units through highly detailed tactical battles. Every mission required me to manage squads, armored vehicles, reconnaissance teams, and heavy weapons while working towards specific objectives. The game placed a strong emphasis on fog of war, command delays, line of sight, and battlefield awareness, making information just as important as firepower. Scenarios ranged from small engagements involving a handful of units to large operations featuring mechanized formations, anti-tank missiles, and armored assaults. The Cold War setting created unique encounters because both sides relied on equipment from the late 1970s and early 1980s. Success depended on patience, positioning, and understanding what my units could actually see and report. Despite technical issues and some aging mechanics, it still offers deep tactical warfare. As a result, I placed it in the great tier. Steel Fury Kharkov, 1942, recreated the Second Battle of Kharkov and allowed me to fight through historical World War II operations from inside several detailed armored vehicles. Across multiple campaigns and missions, I could take control of different crew positions including commander, gunner, loader, and driver while leading tanks through large-scale battles. The game featured realistic ballistics, vehicle damage, destructible environments, and deformable terrain that changed as combat unfolded. I also had access to different tank models, support units, and mission objectives based on real historical events. Battles encourage careful positioning and understanding how armor, ammunition, and battlefield conditions affected survival. However, learning the controls could be difficult, and some technical issues made basic actions harder than they should have been. Even with those problems, the detailed tank simulation remained the strongest part of the experience. That is why it reaches the great tier. Regiments explored a Cold War conflict across Germany and Poland, where I commanded NATO and Warsaw Pact formations through a series of connected military operations. Instead of isolated battles, the campaign tracked unit experience, casualties, upgrades, and battlefield progress across multiple stages. Capturing important zones earned resources that I could spend on reinforcements, support assets, larger deployment limits, and stronger task forces. Combat involved managing tanks, mechanized infantry, artillery, air defense systems, and support units while adapting to changing objectives. Units that survived gained experience, while losses carried over between battles, making every engagement matter. The game also included pause and time control options, which allowed me to plan attacks and coordinate forces without relying on constant fast clicking. Combined with its persistent campaign structure and large-scale Cold War battles, the gameplay felt both accessible and strategically rewarding. With those strengths, it reaches the excellent tier. Combat Mission Black Sea imagined a modern war in Ukraine where I commanded American, Russian, and Ukrainian forces through highly detailed tactical battles built around modern military technology. Every engagement required me to manage infantry squads, armored vehicles, reconnaissance assets, artillery, and air support while dealing with realistic fog of war and battlefield communication limits. The game introduced drones, precision-guided artillery, active protection systems, electronic warfare, night vision equipment, and advanced anti-air defenses, making combat far deadlier than earlier historical settings. Missions ranged from reconnaissance operations to large mechanized assaults involving tanks, helicopters, and combined arms formations. Success depended on gathering information, coordinating different unit types, and reacting quickly to changing battlefield conditions rather than relying on brute force alone. The variety of scenarios, modern equipment, and deep tactical systems created some of the most engaging battles I experienced. That performance earns its place in the masterpiece tier. Call to Arms brought modern military warfare to the battlefield as I commanded infantry squads, support weapons, and armored units in tactical, real-time engagements. Battles revolved around capturing objectives, controlling key areas, and using terrain effectively to gain an advantage over enemy forces. I could move soldiers between cover positions, throw grenades, heal wounded troops, and carefully manage line of sight during firefights. The game placed a strong emphasis on positioning because units caught in the open could be eliminated very quickly. Environments were highly detailed and destructible, helping battles feel more immersive as fighting spread across roads, buildings, and industrial areas. The ability to control individual soldiers added another layer of tactical decision-making during combat. Combined with its modern setting, realistic firefights, and strategic depth, the experience stood out from many traditional war games. That goes in the excellent tier. That's my take on tank warfare games. The highest-ranked titles turned every battle into a contest of tactics rather than firepower alone. Thanks for watching.